last week's podcast. Becca filled in for you.
Yeah, I think she did a great job.
It was coming on the heels of a really cool presentation that I was part of, but I talked about that. That was great. You, on the other hand, you were somewhere warm.
I didn't want to come home. I did not want to come back. The weather was gorgeous. Everything was perfect. We were down in Marco Island in Florida. I got some nice sun. I played pickleball. It was phenomenal. Pickleball, bocce ball, did walks. They had the manatees in the little dock area there, but overlooking the water. We had dolphins swimming around too. Went walking on the beach. It was great.
Sounds like a little taste of that retired life.
I retired life waiting for you to play shuffleboard. So, well, you know what? It's funny. Yes, they had two different, maybe two, three different shuffleboard courts around the whole area. I'm like, look at this. This is great. This is fantastic. Talking to a couple of different people. One guy, retired police officer, he said that last week was his 50 years after retirement.
Wow.
So he was retired for 50 years. He was doing great. He was moving. And I said, that's what I want to do. That's who I want to be.
Yeah.
I want to be at that age, moving around, hanging with my friends, being active and loving life. And then there was another retired New York State trooper that I met, and he was out 15 years. And just talking about the changes and things. One of the bigger things that kind of I picked up on, we go to the farmer's market, and there's a Marco Island PD guy there. So I stop, of course, and say something to him. I told him I'm up from Maine, work up there. And the first thing out of his mouth after he realized that I was a police officer says, I got 6 years left. Not, what do you do up there? How is it up there? Well, this is what's going on down here. It's, I got 6 years left. How about you?
The timer, right? The timer that everybody's kind of got going in the back.
That was crazy. So I told him, my shtick and what I've got going. And I said, man, I can't wait to be down here not working. And he just laughed. Walking back to the car, and Laura goes and looks at me and she goes, okay, I've witnessed that conversation happen several times now. You meet a police officer from another area. And the only thing, and most of the time, the first thing that comes out of their mouth is how much time they have left on the job. What is it about you guys that the only thing that you can talk about is retirement? She's like, you've got a lot of things going on that you do in and around officer wellness, firearms training, all the different stuff. And I'm sure he does too. But everybody looks at the commonality of retirement. When are you done? So what is that?
Oh, it's interesting. I don't know. I mean, I would probably answer the same way. Maybe it's one of those things like living the dream. The best math I've ever done in my life is figuring out how much time is left. Outside of that, it's like, it's horrible. I don't know. I wonder.
Yeah.
This is the Maine Responder Podcast. Real conversations about work, the pressure, and the lives shaped by service. There's no single lane here, no script, just honest talk. Let's get into it. So we're joined today by Matt Leach. Matt is a firefighter, social worker, one of the people helping to lead the wellness mission in the York County Regional Training Center here in Southern Maine. Matt is committed to supporting the well-being of first responders and, building out programs that are going to be helpful on helping people in the profession essentially be healthy, resilient, and stay connected to the community. He's a family man, someone who genuinely cares about helping others live better lives. I would say both on and off the job. So welcome, Matt, our first guest. I always say fire service. I don't know why. Does that make sense? Fire service? I feel like I'm a lot older than I am when I say fire service. But I don't know. I don't know. Is it firefighter, fireman, firewoman? I don't know. Nobody's corrected me yet. So I'm sticking with it. But yeah, so fire service, first responder, say it that way, I guess. And now you've decided to become a social worker, which is an awesome combo, culturally competent, right? Which is exactly what we're looking for in the profession. Matt, you also Here at the Work County Regional Training Center, you and Jill, you guys are basically you're heading up the wellness game here for the county and beyond. Hopefully, tell us a little bit about that.
Well, first and foremost, I'm ecstatic to be your first guest. This
Yeah.
is my first podcast, so this will be fun. Um, yeah, I wear a bunch of different hats,
Yep.
but in terms of the facility opened January was kind of a soft opening. Facility is located in Alfred. We sit in this beautiful building.
Yeah.
It was part of some COVID funding money that came forward and really developed a training facility that was structured for first responders. And yeah, Jill Ballard, she's a local therapist and a first responder spouse. She and I have been tasked with handling kind of the wellness and resiliency training here, and that's really where we're starting. There's so much that can be done, and I think, you know, our goal. I do some education stuff with Struggle Well, which is a program we can talk about that at some point
Yeah.
too. But their model is first responders, and it includes firefighters, police officers, EMTs, corrections, dispatch, anybody working from that 911 phone call backwards. And I found it fascinating, and that's kind of the model that we want to kind of adopt here. Is yeah, we all have these different professions, but at the end of the day, the similarities and struggles and even the wins out of the professions,
Yeah.
a lot of them are very similar. And, our goal was to kind of capture that from a group standpoint to recognize like, yeah, I actually sometimes look at the police service as doing a lot of different things than we're doing. And I think that's admirable. So I think combining some of the things that we're doing and the ideas of bringing them to the same spot, saying, hey, let's take the best of it and kind of move it forward to support our people.
From first responder to social work,
Oh gosh. Yeah.
what's that journey like? I would love to know kind of what it was that brought you to in that direction.
Yeah, filling that void.
Yeah.
Ooh, I mean, we could be here right now. But I'll give you the quick version. Like I wanted to be a police officer. I started there at 14 years old, wanted to be a police officer. And, you know, um, the Explorer program gets shut down. So what do? I go into the fire station, knock on the door, and I'm like, hey, will you take me? And they're like, heck, fine. Um, so they did. So, I started as a volunteer in this community and had some really awesome experiences, but also had some really challenging experiences. And then fast forward, 21 years old, I get my first fire job. My first year as a paramedic, I had 4 pediatric codes that I was involved in. And back then you're 21 years old, your brain's not fully developed until 30 these days. So, I look back and I just, it was another call. Even though I knew that it was heavier, it was another call. And I think as I went on in the career, it's funny because when you were talking about like, when do you remember counting down? And for me, it was a pretty like year 12 to 13, somewhere in there is when I think I started my countdown, of like, oh, I got, got 10 years to retire or whatever the number was. But I realized the work was getting heavy and drew me to kind of peer support stuff. Um, I remember my first peer support thing. The guy, we came across a guy and it was firefighter behavioral health awareness. And the guy does suicide tracking. And believe it or not, first responders still don't have a database to track suicide and the work in the career. And, this guy got his master's degree. And during one of his projects, the instructor said, hey, do you guys know you have like a suicide problem in the fire service? And he's like, no. And so he took it on himself to start tracking that stuff and has done a great job of tracking like these events because a lot of times retirees go and take their life after retirement or whatever the case is, and we're just not capturing that, and that's a life, which is really important. And I saw a place of, hey, what can I do to not only figure my own experiences out, but kind of work to help our group. Because when you get into peer support, yeah, there's a degree of helping yourself, but at the same, you're there to serve the population that we work with. So that was kind of my draw, and I I really fell into peer support work and started getting some education around it. And I I didn't want to I didn't want to be a firefighter for 40 years. I watched guys at the fire station. They're staying years and years and years. And I'm like, I just don't want to do that. Like so what do you do? And 2015, my dad passed away.
Mhm.
And that was a sentinel event. Like that was a big event for me. And he was a pastor. So it's like, hey, do you go in the family business? And that wasn't that wasn't my calling. And but yet I grew up with a lot of skill set from that experience. And, watching my dad who did was a counselor, did a lot of work with substance use folks. And I just realized, I'm like, man, I was built for service and I just wanted to learn to serve in a different way.
Mm.
And so, yeah, I mean, going to school, I swore off I was never going to work with first responders. I was like, I can't figure myself out. I got my own issues. We all do that, right? And
Why do you think that is? You just said couldn't figure yourself out, right? Was it frustration at all, or just like, nope, I just want something different?
we can use the big dirty word of shame, right? Like, I mean, when we push away from things, a lot of times it's our own, that shame.
Yeah.
It's a driver. And I think if I look back and talk about, or I hope to talk about that, but post traumatic growth,
Yeah.
sometimes we focus really on like that negative experience and how it took pieces of us. But I think sometimes we forget that it grew us in some different ways. And I mean, the human brain's primed for survival. So that's why we do it. I mean, that's the short, but, no, I think a lot of us don't recognize what's inside of us and that you gotta go through that season to really push forward and get the lessons, get the experience and pull all the meat off the bone. And that's not fun.
Yeah.
I think that's a lot of us get stuck in that. And I would say that it's a season when you go there, if
Mhm.
you're willing to go there, because that's a big deal. If you're willing to do the work. And as a therapist, I'm sure you heard the term, willing to do the work. It's work. Change is work. And for many of us, we're more comfortable staying in what we know. And even the most uncomfortable spaces. But yeah, I mean, I think a lot of us like, it's uncomfortable to do that work, but when you do it, it's fulfilling. And I think that's been part of my journey is as I've gone, I've recognized that the same things that were challenging actually were gifts as I look to the other side. Those challenges that I've had and experienced, I get the luxury of listening to first responders. And therapy is not about advice giving.
Right.
It's not. It's about listening and seeing their journey and providing a sense of hope in it. Because a lot of us, when we get in the box, it's like there's no hope.
Yeah.
And, when you talk to, I can talk to somebody and say, yeah, okay, you had a PTSD diagnosis, but there's hope.
Yeah.
This is not a sentence. This is not a t-shirt. There's hope out of this and there's pathways through this.
Mm.
But you gotta do the work.
Yeah. When I went to therapy, I found I was doing a lot of talking. It felt good to talk. And also when I was doing that talking, and I say this often, is that these lights would go off. And I was like, I think I just figured it out. Not figured it out, but like, oh, I hear what I'm saying now. And to have the right person to be on the other side of you, just kind of guiding you along that conversation, it was just so enlightening. It was just a really good feeling. And I don't know, you walk out of there just, for me, feeling amazing, empowered, just in a good mood. I did not expect that. My thought was, I'm gonna go in there. I'm gonna say all this stuff. I'm gonna feel like shit. It's just gonna make it worse. You know, these are all the roadblocks I was putting up before I ever even tried it. And I just say this, in case one of the two people that listens to this decides to go to therapy if they're not already. But
Yeah, I think on the same lines, enlightenment is exactly the way I would put it. I had that same fear of going to therapy going, this is weakness,
Hmm.
but I'm going to give it a try. I'm going to share my vulnerabilities and where I feel is lacking or what's bothering me. And I'm going to see that as, letting somebody know about my weakness or weaknesses. And going through was exactly that, totally different experience. I did. I walked out of the room with almost a pep in my like, wow, that felt good to release that. I didn't know that was weighing me down as much as it was. And that just by talking, I didn't get much advice, but I was heard. And it was a great feeling, which then, encouraged me to now I'm part of the York County peer support team. So I think it's fantastic that you guys are leading this up here. I think it's going to be a very beneficial piece for our community, first responder community, and for our community in general too. So I'm excited about that and to hear more and see more about it. And going and doing the peer support has me peeling back. We're there to help others, but you're also peeling back layers for yourself too. Like you hear somebody say something and you go, I said that. I felt that. And now I'm hearing it from somebody else. So we're there to help people, but we're helping ourselves too. It's validating to hear it that we're not the only ones.
I think that I can only speak to my struggle, but I think that isolation piece, I'm the only one experiencing this and I'm the only one and nobody would feel this way. And I can't believe I feel this way. We do that to ourselves. That's the human condition that we do. And I think that the work that everybody in the peer support community and I include the work you're doing here for sure is like you're bringing awareness to you're not the only one. You're not the only one sitting in the recliner thinking, wow, this is this. And that is I think that's step one to get people to explore. And when you talk about therapy, like therapy is beneficial when you dig in and you do the work. And I think that a lot of a lot of our folks, like they're willing to do the work a lot. They just don't know the particular starting points. And a lot of times the starting points are you kind of sorting life out and getting your feet under you. Because at some point, life has whacked every one of us sideways. And a lot of those things, like when you talk about the wellness stuff, um, when your world's out of control, you got to figure out like what is in my control. And that's a lot of step one. When we talk about therapy is starting with people there and saying, yeah, I get it. I'm hearing you, but what is a small step? And I am big. I did family therapy, which makes me big on accountability. I think our population, when they're willing to do the work and dig in, I think that they walk out of therapy and say, I can do this. And then they see the results and the efforts that they put in. And I think that's my favorite part is when they do the work, when they're ready and they're like, I'm ready. Good. Because that's the difference between staying where you are and moving forward. And again, we tend to want to stay in the discomfort because that's what we know. And that vulnerability word that you talk about, that's huge because nobody wears a t-shirt that says, I enjoy being vulnerable. Nobody. No, I mean, quite honestly, it's opposite of your training, right? And yet, if you think about it, some of the best people that we work with know how to use tactical vulnerability. Like they know how to sit with a family. And so fun little fact in between a lot of the other stuff I did, youth fire prevention and prevention has been a mindset that's just built in. I think that that's some of the struggle that I've had over the years is going to the same experience and then going there a week later. I it's the definition of insanity when we're doing these things over. And but yet we're in a business, which is really important to understand. And this is a lot of our mindset. Is we're in a business that's fix it now, fix the problem in front of us. And we're looking at things that in my mind is a bit backwards but it does take some investment in the other side. I think we're starting to move there with the screen, the annual check-ins I think are great. I think it's a way for people to demystify meeting with a clinician or a therapist. I think it takes away a little bit of that, like walking through the office. I think those are great strategies, but I think we're really waiting until somebody's career is at a point or they're in a situation or event and we're not really dialing back with like, let's do some education. That is with the training facility, we actually all our classes are open for family support system. So not just the first responder for family support system. And the reason for that is our families recognize when we're doing worse far before our employer will.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
so, I think that we're trying to create that culture where it's like, hey, we can have those conversations, supports Jill's work that she's doing, and there's some great spouses doing some work. I just, she kind of heads it up with some other great spouses, but they, they're addressing that. They are becoming a sounding board for spouses to be able to share their experiences because I'm only married because of my wife and her willingness to sit through some challenging days. And and I I I'm humbled by that because, like, I do think first responder spouses are built different. I do. I think they're way tougher than we give them credit for, typically tougher than the first responder. When we start to recognize this on, like, a preventative standpoint, we start to bring them into the mix of the conversation because they're likely to recognize, problematic, whether it be an addiction issue, whether it be a mental health concern, they're likely to recognize that far before your employer is. And to me, we sit in this stigma still of like, if I tap out or take a break, then I'm weak. I sat there and I don't, there's no soapbox. Like I'm embarrassed that that I didn't tap out. I think that one of the things that would have changed a lot of how I navigated some situations was taking that space. And as first responders, I don't think we're willing to recognize that sometimes and recognize that your nervous system, has been on high alert for a long period of time. There needs to be some recovery. And if you're not getting that, you're hurt. You're setting yourself up for burnout. You're setting yourself up for a lot of these other problematic behaviors. And so, yeah, I mean, I think that we're still in that mindset where we're going to deal with it when it becomes a problem.
Yeah, I love that. I think just, thinking about my family, um, yeah, my spouse is probably way tougher than me and has identified some stuff and has challenged me and has made me better in so many ways. Uh, I could tear up just talking about it because there have been some days that just,
Yeah.
and yeah, I'm really grateful. I'm really grateful for the situation I have for sure. And it's so cool that this now exists, right? This group of spouses out there doing the work. It's incredible. What's the vision for the future of the program that you're trying to start here?
I I think the vision is embedding wellness concepts in programs. So, we'll work to develop like a 2-hour in-service wellness program for an ENT class or a fire 1 and 2 class or any of the PD related classes that they can be pulled into a class. So you as an instructor are like, listen, I want my students to learn, a wellness activity. One of the things is I call it the I call it the, first day therapist toolbox. Like, what what I would work with somebody from a therapy standpoint is really to develop early skills because our group, believe it or not, can put skills to use really easy. They can. Once they understand it, once they buy into it, we live in structure. So for us, once you help people understand, like, here's the structure, let's work together to kind of figure out like how structure in your life is working and peeling that out and saying where do you work? What activity is good for you? When you talk about pickleball, you know, that's renewing. I hear, who are you doing it with? How is that working? Are you building that into your life intentionally and not just in a passive nature?
Right.
Because that's, I took up jujitsu a couple of years ago and I never realized how much it was. I mean, I did on the mats. You recognize, you're like, this is great. This is fantastic. And it's one of those things, if you build those structures into your life, those wellness activities, that they're helpful. They're a place for you to get that energy out. And I mean, those are just activities, but we're talking about skills that we can build into people, or not build into people, but just to present to them and see breathing exercises. Some people love them. Some people think they're foolish. Great, fantastic, but it's a toolbox. And not everybody uses a wrench. Some might use a hammer. And I think presenting that to people is kind of our start when we talk about prevention. I do think we've done a really good job of talking about some of the challenges of a career.
Mhm.
But my hope is, and I work through a post traumatic growth mindset, is my hope is to point out some of the wins in the career that we have, and I think sometimes that's hard when you talk about it, but as a crew, recognizing, I speak from a fire standpoint, when you have a tough call and you're a part of a group, is to not only focus on that experience, but the wins out of that experience. And we kind of set ourselves up for failure with after action reports when it's we're looking for that one thing that we missed, but we're not always celebrating those 99 that we did right. I think some of the good after actions that I've seen have really supported that and really focused on, like, here's the wins, here's our opportunities. So those are some things that I think starting to help build that in. Um, I think that we're pretty much open to the concept of what people want to bring here. It's not about, calling your department and saying, "Hey, this is the program,"
Right.
because it's going to be totally different. Like, your program for your department is going to be different from mine. It's going to be different. What do people need? And the hope is that this training facility will act as kind of a place where people can start to identify the need, and we can start to fill that through education
Mhm.
and training and support. Um, so that's kind of the hope of the facility.
That's great. The facility itself, having that here, is phenomenal. And I remember walking through the doors here when it wasn't even done, and I was like, "This is a game changer." And then to know the wellness piece being such a big part of this, for me, I was like, "This is great." At least right now, it seems like we're doing everything right. Right? Everybody's going to follow through, and it's going to be amazing. You mentioned when you were just talking post traumatic growth, and I think I just saw that in a class. Right? You mentioned struggle well also.
Oh yeah.
Can you talk about that? Because I reached out to you and I was like, Matt, in an email, and if you could hear my voice, I was like, should I take this or am I going to be a chief getting in the way, of people that want to actually have a conversation and not feel weird by my rant?
First of all, I love it. And I love it. One that you're willing to reach out and be the big vulnerable word. Like, fantastic, right? No, and the best part about these classes, so Struggle Well is a 2-day event. It's a 2 8-hour day session. And it's based on post traumatic growth. And it it gives opportunity to kind of lend to understanding what post traumatic growth is. It talks about the different strategies that we can use to kind of recognize and give space for post traumatic growth and perspective. And then it also kind of reflects on your story as a human being. When you ask me about my story, you know, I sometimes sometimes we describe our stories as just these negative experiences that happen to us. And sometimes I look at I lost my dad at a younger age. Um, Yeah, it was pretty horrific, but it absolutely changed the course of my life for the better. It reaffirmed my service. It reaffirmed these things. It made me dig deeper into some personal spaces that I wasn't willing to go up till that point. Like, I was doing great, but on the other part, my value system around my family, like, I was balancing it, but I wasn't digging in as much as my value for family showed. So I think that that's where, like, these programs, so yeah, that's post-traumatic growth is really built on that concept. And, it talks about service. It talks about how to serve. But no, it balances. There's no rank in the room. This is not, and to be honest with you, the classes that I've done, and I just did one recently, like, the guys are looking at leadership and going, yeah, when you've got leadership up there being honest and vulnerable, and your depth of sharing is up to you. Nobody comes and says, "Listen, you're gonna share this." No, you're not. You can share what you want. You can get what you want out of the program. You can sit there and stare and color things, or you can just sit there and dive in. It's up to you. Your depth of participation of this program is your depth. But no, I'm super encouraged because I think, much like the concept of bringing our groups together, you've got police officers in the room, you've got corrections in the room, you've got folks from, the state, structure, in terms of law enforcement and stuff like that. And you got all these people involved. And then somebody will start sharing and it'll be like, but I'm a fireman and you're a police officer. You, you know, it universalizes those experiences. And it puts it through the lens of like growth. And I think a lot of us, when we get into this career, we get into it for curiosity and growth. Like, remember the first time you go on your first call, like you're like, I'm there to learn, I'm ready, you know, and over time it kind of wanes. And I think that that's what this program really talks about is how to look at your career and how to say, wow, all these experiences, how do I make sense of them? And it gives you a place. But there's a 2 day, so 2 day struggle well. And then there's a program called Warrior Path. And I was an attendee of Warrior Path, and it's a 5 day. You get on a plane, they pay for the plane ticket, they'll fly you. I think there's 14 places throughout the country. We've got the luxury of having Travis Mills Foundation right up the street. And you are with 8 other participants, and it's a deep dive. It is not a it is a deep dive into what you want. And I always said I probably should have hit that around the 15-year mark of my career. I think it would have been a great space. And that's the look back method, right?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I wouldn't be here if that had happened. And I think that that's an important part to recognize. But if you're in a space in your career and you're struggling, you're looking at trying to make sense of this and try to make sense of what you're doing in the career, it offers a deep dive and it's free. All these programs are free. They're part of Boulder Crest, which is a organization that a gentleman started. He was an EOD guy, and he started these programs for free. And in really recognizing that our work is important, and if we're not honoring our work and recognizing us, we're missing the boat. So yeah, but that we're doing one in Alfred.
Yeah.
We're doing one in Alfred at the training facility the 13th and 14th of April. We've got one coming up in the fall. There's still room for the one in April, so I still have a handful of spots left, which is great. So sign up, please. I mean, anybody who wants to know anything about those programs, I'm more than happy to share. So
That's great. You got
Is I right along that same line with you talking about the Warrior Path. We did that conference up in Rumford, and they were up there, and just talking with them. At first I was like, it's not for. I don't have the damage, I guess I should say, internally to go to that. And I kind of said, I was like, yeah, I'm good. They're like, no, you should go. You'll be surprised at what you're going to find out about yourself. And then you'll go through it and you'll want to help us more and work with others more. So it's coming full circle now from that, hearing it from you going, okay,
yeah,
this is more of the path is showing itself a little bit more through the help
I
and helping yourself to help others, kind of like the airplane method. The oxygen mask drops. You got to put it on yourself first to help others.
there's two parts. There's two parts of that I would definitely talk to. Warrior Path is not for. I guess the analogy I think of is the Cars, the movie The Cars when he's rolling in with the tires hanging off on fire, and that analogy, like we're all waiting for that. We're like, okay, but but that's my argument. We talked about this before. Like we wait until we're on fire and the wheels are falling off, and like this program, sure, that supports a lot of this, but the group that I went with was all throughout the country. Was a bunch of military guys, a couple first responder. A lot of our military folks were, first responder folks as well in the room, which was great. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think that a lot of us put that barrier in place and say, I'm going to wait until this. I'm going to wait until this. And I did. I was so ashamed to go. Like I felt bad. My fire chief, we started as kids together. Like this is a guy that I can say anything to. And I felt uncomfortable going to him and being like, hey, I'm going to go do this. And when I finally did, I got the guts up, he's like, yeah, yeah. And I think a lot of it that we miss, we wait. We're like, I'm not bad enough, or I'm not this, or I'm not that. And I would argue it's a prevention program. Like you need to take the stuff that you've been. And that's why I say like that 15-year, person in the career, like what a benefit place to go to lay that stuff down. You did 15 years in a first responder career. You've done and seen some experience. I don't care if you've been in the smallest town in the world or the biggest metro place. And the program's just great for that. It allows you to lay your experiences make sense of them, reaffirm your value system, and understand what your value. And this is like, I'm a big value person. And I think we all are in the first responder world, especially when we get into it. We put it on the cars, we do this, we put it on the trucks. Um, and I think that space, taking that time for yourself and doing that is just it's that tap out, that I talk about in your career, that it gives you that room to breathe a little bit and say, listen, I am here. I am doing this. Struggle Well is open to retirees too. I, my wife cuts hair, so she sees the retirees' other halves. So, and it's one of those spaces that first couple of years from retirement can be really challenging because you had a value system and all of a sudden it kind of shifted or changed or that group around you.
It's gone.
And yeah, and that's where I hear like everybody talks about, oh, retirement's going to be great. And then you talk to some retirees and you're like, first couple of years of retirement are challenging. This program is really good in helping you navigate that piece. Um, at the very least, looking at what you're doing and saying, is this what I want to do? And really pulling that sense of control back in your life. Like I can do this. So yeah, I mean, I love it. And I hope more people take advantage of it. It's different, and I think our people want growth. They want to make sense of the job. And I think this does an opportunity or has an opportunity.
I'll say so.
Yeah, I signed up for it.
Oh,
So I'm looking forward to it. I went to a retreat in California. Um, it was command staff, right? Number one and number two. This is how they ran this one, but they have a bunch of different programs, and I was like, "What am I doing going to this?" And a friend of mine, in the profession said, "Hey, this is going to be covered. I want you to go. You're into wellness. You're going to get something out of this." And I'm like, "All right, great. A trip to California." And I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know who was going to be there. It was this very small, intimate group. Um, it it changed me. It had such an impact. And when I came back, I was like 2.5 days. That's all it was. Um, we did a lot of different things, a lot of things that I wouldn't do normally. Well, I probably would now, but you know what I mean? I wouldn't have done them at first. And I just felt so light. I felt so good listening to other chiefs in the room from departments of all. I was the chief of the smallest department. The issues that we create for ourselves, I'll say in this instance, are all the same. We're all worried about the same things. And when you say them out loud, kind of like I mentioned before, when I was in therapy and I'm talking, they kind of sound, I don't want to minimize it and say ridiculous, but for me, they sounded ridiculous. I'm like, what am I what am I worrying about this ridiculous thing or whatever, whatever it is. And it just puts things into such perspective. And the group that was running it was I mean, just they were so good that I ended up saying, Did you guys like bug my house? And are you like looking at my social media? How do you know this? How do you know this so well? And they just, it's what you guys do. So yeah. So it's kind of, they're looking at it from a different lens. And for us, I say it every single time. My head is nodded. I didn't know, it just was, a time where I needed to take a minute, breathe and sort it out. And going to that retreat was very much that, so I, like you, whether it's struggle well, whether it's, don't be scared of these things, even though it might seem a little woo woo or whatever. I'm telling you, I guarantee it'll probably knock your socks off, and it would be way, way more than you would give it credit for ahead of time. I'm looking forward to this. I'm looking forward to going.
Yeah, I love that. I love that for you. And I think that a lot of people, when they do these things, they're outside, they're different, right? They offer opportunity for us, and they can act as a catalyst for our change. That a lot of times, like, you know it in your heart, but you're like, man, I don't know where to go with this. They create that space for us to do that. We work in such demanding careers that like there's not a lot of space, you know. I don't care. Like, I don't care if you work in the smallest place to the biggest place. The speed that we operate, it doesn't allow us to do that. And uh, I mean, yeah, I would really encourage people if you haven't done that in your career. And I have crazy ideas about sabbatical concepts in the fire service, and I mean, programs like this can offer a little bit of that concept where you know you get to create space for you.
Yep.
And that is not something that people in service typically do. Um, we're here to serve, and we're here to serve some more. And then, but no, I'm excited. I hope that you'll see the same experience that a lot have. And I think last I knew, like almost 600 people in the state of Maine have gone through Struggle Well. Wow. Yeah. So, it's ironically, it's spread far. The northern part of the state is showing off. They have done some great classes. We've had a little bit harder time, down here getting it started. But I'm really hoping with the training facility that we'll get some folks in, to really champion it.
Yeah.
And, I look at leadership like you showing up and doing that says a lot because, your officers, when they ask for that time off to do it, when they do that, you're like, that is important.
Mhm.
And I do think that the 2 day is very much, kind of, it applies to pretty much everybody, that the warrior path concept. Yeah, you're struggling more. But again, to your point, like, you don't have to be yeah, you got to be in a place where you're looking for some change, but you don't have to wait until the wheels are falling off. And, but that's for any of these programs.
Oh,
So,
yeah. Yeah. Hmm. Now, what would you, how long have you been working, fire?
uh, career 23 years.
23 years. Okay.
Yeah, 23 years.
Where you are today, right? Which is, I mean, for you, it's just a really cool place, I think. I mean, like I said before, culturally competent is one thing, but you're in it, and so I think that's awesome. What would you offer for a piece of advice? Somebody new who's, police, fire, EMT dispatcher, and they just happen to know that your experience and what you do now. What would you offer a new person who's like, I'm thinking about it?
Wow, that's a solid question. I think what I would offer a new person is there are points in your career where you're gonna have to take care of yourself.
Yeah.
There are points in your career where you're gonna have to look at your career in terms of space for you and the speed of the career and stuff like that. I think that, and I'm only looking from my spot, but there are times in my career that I didn't have space, and that resulted in me playing catch up later on, if that makes sense. That you can only press the gas for so long before your tank's going to run out. And I think that we're starting to recognize that a little bit. I know I laugh because, I'm going to be the one shouting boundaries. I know it's a new concept to a lot of people. You go to therapy, it's a therapy word, but, we see a generation coming in that I really see does a good job with boundaries. They realize that work and work and home is home. And yeah, we've got a generation in the fire service, and I speak from that perspective, but, that still doesn't totally understand what to do with that. I think there's a middle ground here, right? There's always, I mean, it's a pendulum swing, but I think there's a middle ground because I do think you can serve. I do think you can serve well, and I still think you can have boundaries. I still think you can lean into the job and still have boundaries, and it's not an either or. This is, and that has to be able to change throughout a career because there are going to be times, you have a family,
Mhm.
you have a family, you're in the throes of it. There's times where that pendulum's going to have to swing a little bit towards your family and knowing that your career, okay, this is a season of my career. This isn't the whole, you know? And I think we're going to do a lot of work around that. My hope is that we can start to educate people on that. And also I think educating leadership on that concept too. Because a lot of times what I notice in our side of the fence is when you have folks that are productive folks, they tend to be given more productive tasks. And then that doesn't leave that room for balance sometimes. And I think as leadership, maybe that's a task level thing to recognize across the board. I'm a middle leadership dude. But I think that recognizing that there are seasons where, as a leader, you've got to recognize that this staff member needs more room here, and being able to share that, being able to say, listen, you got this going on. I've got 72,000 projects that I could have you on, but I'm not sure that's valuable to you as a human. And having those check-ins, um, and but that's what, yeah, I think that that's what I would say. I'm not a fan of working 72 to 80 hours a week. I think, the data coming out right now is like 52 hours a week. Anything over that, then we start to see some really challenging spots. And you think about a first responder career, how many people work over 52 hours a week?
Right.
Big number,
Right.
big number. Um, I think we're going to have to really look at that. So,
What do you think, as far as challenges and wellness on the organizational level, we always hear it's leadership, and I've been giving this a lot of thought because I want to be able to answer the question, where do we start? We want to create a wellness program. Where do we start? And I hate, I don't hate, but the term wellness program, I feel like you're already starting off wrong. It's, like I say, right? Yeah. It's the culture. So what, but, but I think it's easy to say top down, the leadership, and so I started thinking about this and I was listening to another podcast and they said something that hit me and it was about continuous improvement, things like that. What I took away was that wellness lives or should live in the shift, right? So it's that middle supervision, right? The sergeants, things like that. Like that's where it should live in the, not so much with the chief. Um, and I could have that wrong. I mean, it's shared, right? The chief should obviously support these things and encourage these things, but it really lives in the shift. That's
Yeah.
kind of what I came up with.
Yeah. If the message isn't being spread and continued and carried
Yeah.
through the shift, it's not going to carry through. Yeah, I agree. I think it's got to be in the middle
yeah,
to push it through.
I think, I guess there's a concept that I learned that I came across was that there's a statement. It's what you do for us, do with us. And I think that any type of and I don't, I don't love the word programs because I think programs imply that it's a one size fits all.
Right.
I mean, and when you're talking about organizational change and culture, not a one size fits all. Your organization is different than mine. Um, and that's good. That's good because it's representative of your community, your town, this and that. Um, but I learned about a concept called sanctuary and in school. And it was about having a place for first responders to come back and feel a sense of security in their work. And they use safety. Whenever I work with first responders, I don't use the word safety because listen, when's the last time you felt safe? Most people would be like, "Oh, well, I was fine." I provide safety, not feel it. This concept of security in your organization. And I think that that's not only done, but felt. And I think it's at all levels. I think when you come in, like, yeah, we're all responsible stewards of it. That when they go out in the field, that first responders need to come back to a place that feels safe. And they talked about it in the terms of sanctuary that feels secure because we're working with individuals that we don't always have great experiences with. So however you create that culture, and I think that's more, I think that's more done on the conversation level of what is like, what you need versus what, I might need is different. But I think that's important to have. And when you're having those conversations as an organization and saying, listen, what are we doing for our people as a leadership, talking to middle groups, what are we doing for our people? And what do we need to be doing for our people? I think that's important because it's a back and forth. We are all responsible. And that includes from the guy walking in the door to the guy walking out the door.
Yeah.
And when we start teaching that and preaching that and sharing that, I think it gives a buy-in to the game. Um, because I don't think wellness is a program.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a concept that we build through organizations and strengthen them and create resilience.
Yeah. It's been good, man. It's been a good conversation. First responder, getting into the social work game. I love it. And you have a presentation coming up, right?
I do. It's on post traumatic growth It's I gotta look. I think it's the 27th. Yeah, I think it's March 27th. We're doing it here at the facility. It's on post traumatic growth. Got to cover concepts, but in my work, it's going to be more skill based stuff. So I think a lot of our people want skills on how to regulate their systems, how to regulate this, how to create margin, and a lot of it's going to be filled with that because understanding post traumatic growth is you got to create capacity to see it there. You got to create capacity to feel it. And a lot of that is skill based stuff. And yeah, I mean, I would say those who are interested in coming, come to the program. It will be doing a lot of. You'll walk out with some tangible things that you can. I'm not going to tell everybody to go to pickleball or jujitsu, but to how to get to some of those spaces, from a first responder perspective, because I think that that's my take. But I think, yeah, it'll be great. We've had continued attendance here, which has just been amazing. I mean, I hope to fill the room, and we're doing a lot of good things with the program, and you're part of it from the steering committee, and I'm grateful to have you a part of it.
Yeah, I'm proud to be. I'm walking right alongside you, man. Whatever you need from me. I just like I said, I think this is great. I think this is going to be some powerful stuff. I think that comes out of everything that you and Jill are doing, and everybody involved. I mean, you're all leaders in this, but everybody there's a pretty good sized group that is really I think committed to just being a part of it and bringing this forward. So I love it. I think it's great. I'm like, finally we're moving in the right direction here in not York County, but even in Maine. Sometimes we can be a little bit behind on some things. Right now, I feel like we're not only catching up, but we're going to surpass it. It just feels good. I'm going to go ahead and say it. We're gonna push forward and we're going to do some great things here. Or that's my expectation. And right.
I no, and I think one of the last things that I would really love to push is you will see us start to push out some information to agencies. If you're part of that, if you're in an agency, part of leadership, get it to the people that need to know. We're going to start putting out some different information to try to get back to see what people are interested in, what they're doing, what's working. Because I don't want to repeat what's working. We're going to repeat what's working, but I don't want to repeat programs that are already in place. And the other part is, if you're interested in being part of this conversation, please reach out to me, Jill, Chief Hooper at the facility, and come and attend a program. Have a conversation. This is not something that we want to stay here. I've already had people talk about, well, let's get a group together. Let's get a coffee club together. Absolutely. That's what we're talking about. So if you're part of that concept and willing to stand up something that's going to be, you know, um, consistent, because that's what we're looking for. Anything we stand up has to have consistency behind it to build trust with our groups. But if you're part of that, then reach out. I would love to have a conversation with you because we're all part of the work.
Yep. Absolutely. Hey, thoughts be.
I think I'm going to just stick with enlightening. We've only done a few podcasts. Our first guest, my neck is tired from nodding my head yes in agreement, and it just feels good. The momentum is there. I think we've got a good space for it and the right people behind it. So I'm excited and proud to see what's next. Appreciate your time, Matt, for sure.
Thanks for having me. This has been an awesome experience.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. We'll put some links how to get in touch with you, maybe email or something like that in the podcast description. Matt, anything in the last words?
Go do the work, have fun, and this really can be a rewarding career.
Well, thanks for joining us, and the two of you listening, as we always say, be safe.